Obamacare. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Stupid people are ruining America.
The president just wants to take care of you. He just doesn't think you're able to do it for yourself.
There's a very thin line between communism, progressivism, Marxism, socialism.
The empire will strike back.
You still don't know that this was political.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to the first episode of America Our Way this new year. My name is Dustin Hoyt. I am, as always, your host. Hope you all had a great holiday season. Hope it was good times with the family. Hope the weather didn't get you down too much. Or the family, for that matter. I want to start off by talking today about a few things that, honestly, have given me a little trouble in terms of finding information. As you may or may not have known from watching the news today, the president, the Obama administration, has been holding NSA meetings in Washington this morning, today, and will hold more tomorrow morning. Now, these meetings come after an Obama-appointed commission recommended 46 changes to the NSA. Now, these changes are part of an initiative to try and get the NSA to be regulated, to stop some of their constitutional violations. And, of course, Obama spurned them when it happened because we don't want smaller government. But he's holding these meetings probably for strictly political reasons. I don't see him actually making a real change because, A, that would be governing, and B, why would a Democrat want to shrink the power of a government bureaucracy or agency? It goes against what they believe in. It doesn't make sense. But that is the big story today in my mind, is the NSA. Now, the meetings that were held today in Washington were considered top secret or sensitive information, secret. So, of course, nobody knows who exactly was in these meetings, how long they lasted, or what they talked about, or if Obama even was offering up some of these changes that the commission recommended, like leaving the American people the hell alone. I'm just kidding. That's not even on the table. They have been considering taking the private information stolen from Americans' phone call and internet records and handing them over to the private sector, or putting a civilian in charge of them. Obama will never put a civilian in charge because then he won't have the authority that he wishes he had. And moving them to a private business implies that they aren't being stole from private businesses. So there's that. But have faith. There is some progress being made on the NSA front. But of course, it's not being made in Washington. It's being made in the States. And in, of all places, California. And this kind of blows my mind because it makes me think, Texas, you need to get on the ball. This is there is a bipartisan bill going through the California state legislature that works to nullify the NSA. It's from the 10th Amendment Center. It's called the Fourth Amendment Protection. The Fourth Amendment Protection Act, and it bans state agencies, officials, and corporations that provide services to the state from supporting or assisting the federal government to spy or collect certain data on Californians. Now, this bill is being co-authored by State Senator Ted Lieu, a Democrat, and State Senator Joel Anderson, a Republican. And the 10th Amendment Center put this bill through. It's a fantastic bill. And it would be great if it was happening in a state where the NSA actually had a data center. or an action center, an activity center. But California does not. So it's a preemptive thing. And it also will prevent companies like Google or Facebook or any of these other large Silicon Valley companies from aiding or providing services, supporting or assisting the federal government to spy or collect certain data on Californians. So that's good in that aspect, because if anything ever comes out in California from these tech companies, there will be hell to pay, which is fantastic. It is one of the few forms of government that is just and warranted and needed, and that is the protection of the American people from force being exerted on them, a denying of their natural rights, the right to privacy, the right to their personal effects from unreasonable searches and seizures. Now, this bugs me because it's happening in California and not in Texas. Because, you see, if it were to be happening in Texas, if the Texas legislature were to co-sponsor and pass a bill identical to this one for our state, it would be much more effective. Now, why, you ask? Because, a little known secret, there is an NSA center in San Antonio. It is a backup data center. Now, most people don't know this, but it's true. It's a dirty little secret of Texas, is that San Antonio, if I'm not mistaken, lobbied to have this NSA center brought to the state, to their town, for jobs. Now, personally, I think that every liberty-minded individual should be trying to shut the water off to that building, shut the electricity off to that building, and immediately have it pulled to the ground brick by brick. But of course, we should pass a law first, so they have the chance to get out before that happens. The idea that such a freedom-loving state like Texas could be home to such an abomination against American freedom, the NSA, is incredibly offensive and appalling to me. Here in Texas, we pride ourselves on being free from the overbloated, disgusting government that the Democrats have created over decades, that some Republicans have helped create. In Texas, we're not so much Republican and Democrat as we are leave us the hell alone. I mean, for example, we've got politicians here in the state that have done their part to ensure that we could be completely severed from the United States and be just fine. There is, I believe, not a comptroller, but one of the railroad commissioners and one of the other politicians have actually made sure that Texas is on its own energy grid with its own water supply and could completely fuel its own survival and economy if for some reason the state were to be to secede, if the state were to be cut off from the rest of the United States. That's a fact. And it's amazing because it was done without much fanfare. It was done without any opposition, for that matter, that I'm aware of. But our state legislatures and elected officials in the executive branch have done their part to ensure that Texas is self-sufficient, and they didn't need any provocation, any protesting, any help or nudging, really, from the American people, from the Texans, from us, the voters. We didn't have to tell them to do that. They did it all on their own because they knew it was right and proper to do. That is an astounding thing. I mean, how often can any person on the planet say, my government is taking care of me and working to ensure my rights are protected. I can't think of any time in my life I've actually said that about government, but in Texas, that's happened. This is the greatest state in the union, hands down, if only for that reason. If only for the reason that our politicians have ensured that we could be cut off from the United States, that we could survive on our own, and that it isn't going to be a killer thing. It isn't going to be death to the state. Now, a lot of people say that we can't secede or that it's impossible for one reason or another. But let's look at this objectively. Now, I'm not advocating secession because I don't think we're to that point yet. I do think it is reasonable to say we might need to be in that point because the Democrats have enshrined this ideology of government being necessary and overbloated government being the solution to all problems, as opposed to the common sense solution, which is obviously government is not the solution. Freedom is the solution. You see, our country was founded on the principles that humans are an end to themselves. That we are the instruments of our own freedom and our own progress and our own success. That human beings will work and succeed at creating wealth and being free and living in a voluntary society. That was the principles that this country was founded on. This country was not founded on the idea that man needed to be overregulated. It was not founded by people looking for handouts. It was not founded by people who thought man's need should be put above his freedom, that man's need was an ends in and of itself. It's not. So I would argue that Texas, the opinions we hold here in this state, are much closer to the ideals of the founders of our nation than Washington today. Now, if Texas were to secede, we would need an overwhelming majority in the state legislature or a massive referendum vote that got 2/3 of the vote of the citizens. I mean, it would have to be a huge number. And even then, there are issues that come with secession, insofar as Texas is a welfare state. We get more money from the federal government than we give to it in the form of taxes. And that's because we've got grants that come through from highways, for schools. We've got food stamps and various welfare programs. We've got lots of public universities, lots of public works in the form of parks and things like that. There are a lot of things that come through our state that are funded by the federal government. Now, that being said, we could simply cut them and be done with it and not need it. But the fact of the matter is that Texas has contributed to the United States a portion of debt. So I personally believe that the only amicable way we could get away with secession would be if we were to find a way to sort of finance or at least acknowledge this debt in the form of our own national debt here in the state of Texas, which I honestly believe that if we were separated from the United States, we could